I'm Izzy at Minerva. Today we're looking at how to create a different type of sleeve cuff, and this one is going to be a cuff with a facing. So it's basically a rolled up cuff with a facing on the inside. So a lovely, simple, elegant solution to how to put a full stop to your sleeve. As always with this series, you're going to need your standard pattern drafting tools, which are listed right next to me here. So take a look at those, go and grab those, and then trace over your sleeve block so you've got a nice copy of that to start off with. Before we start, I should mention that today I am wearing the Named Clothing Kilo wrap dress, which is an absolutely gorgeous top, and I'm wearing it sewn up in our Minerva exclusive fabric, which is our Tiger Paradise viscose jersey stretch knit fabric. We will link those two products below the video just in case you're interested in making your own version. All right, let's get into it. So in front of me here, I've got my standard sleeve block. It may look slightly different to yours, and that's absolutely fine. Front and the back, we only need one sleeve for this. Now, the first thing we're going to do is grab a piece of paper and just pop it underneath the sleeve so that we can extend the bottom of the sleeve. Now, in order to draft out my sleeve, the first thing I want to do is to create a cuff which is 5 centimeters deep. So I'm going to draw 2 lines which are offset from the base of the sleeve, which are 5 centimeters apart. The next one I'm going to do is going to be 3 centimeters offset from this line here. This section actually becomes our facing. This becomes the bit that's on the outside that we're going to see, and this is the inner cuff, which is going to be folded up and onto this pattern piece. Now, on our sleeve pattern piece, I want you just to mark a point that is, again, the depth of the cuff, so 5 centimeters offset from the base of the sleeve. Now, when we create our cuff, what we want is for the sleeve to sit nice and flat and straight. So we're just drafting a very simple cuff at this stage. And what we want to do now is just straighten off the sides of the sleeve so that it can roll up onto each other and without kind of puckering. So at this point here, where we've drawn our 5 centimeter offset, what we're going to do now is just very simply draw a line that is straight down, perpendicular to that, and intersects with all these other lines. And repeat that for this side over here. Finish off the pattern piece just by drawing in a nice solid line down the bottom here. And really, that's all there is to it. So go and grab some tracing paper, pop your tracing paper over your sleeve, and let's add our seam allowances as required. Add your 1.5 centimeter seam allowance to the entire perimeter of the pattern piece. Brilliant. Just once you've added your seam allowance to the perimeter, just dash in all of your fold lines, and also dash in the base of the sleeve where you want the cuff to kind of stop and finish, because that will also be another fold line. And that is not a fold line. Okay, brilliant. We can also, I would recommend, when you cut it out of your fabric, to cut some little notches into those side seams as well, just so you can really clearly see what you're trying to achieve there. Brilliant. Just finish off this pattern piece by giving the standard annotations of the grain line and the pattern piece name. Now, it's worth saying that I have added a seam allowance to the bottom of the facing, which you might not necessarily need to do. If you're just going to overlock the bottom of the facing, that's absolutely fine. You don't need to add your seam allowance. However, just to create a nice neat finish, I thought I'd fold it under and then under again. So I've just got a really nice neat finish on the inside of my sleeve. Brilliant. So cut out that pattern piece and then cut it out of calico, and then we'll sew it up together. So here's our pattern piece with the right side facing up. We're just simply going to flip it over so the right sides are together, and we're just going to pin in place the long seam, making sure to line up the notches as we go. Sew that seam using your standard 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Once you've sewn that seam, just press it open. Using a friction pen, mark a point that is 3 centimeters away from the end of the cuff. Do that on both sides. Then turn the cuff under, so with the wrong sides touching, so the raw edge touches that 3 centimeter line that you've just drawn. And basically what all that's doing is it's just turning the cuff under by 1.5 centimetres. Pin that in place. Press that in place next. Okay, next we're going to turn this right side facing out. And now you might just want to use a friction pen just to mark on some of your fold lines if you're going to find that helpful. And these will obviously iron off in a few minutes because we're using our nice friction pen. Okay, so right side of the garment is now facing up. And what we want to do is basically pinch the fabric at the middle line here. And then we want to fold all of that under at that point. So wrong sides are together, and we're just folding it along that middle fold line. Lovely. Okay, so at this point we've got it all nicely folded under. I'm just going to grab my iron and just press that in place. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is then fold the whole of the cuff up with right sides together along this line here. Now, when you turn it out like that, you'll see that you've also got a little line around there, which is a nice little reference for you as to how you want it pinned. Okay, and once it's like that, then you can just press that in place as well. Lovely. Okay, so basically that is the shape of our cuff, but we just need to make sure that it's going to sit there and stay there really nicely. Nothing's actually sewn together, it's all just kind of folded up into place. So what we're going to do now is very carefully just pin the facing to the main sleeve. So open it out very carefully now that you've got that nice crease line there. So just pop a few pins into the top of the facing, which is on the inside. You can see it through the fabric at this point, just so that it doesn't move and shift about as you're about to sew it in place. And then we're literally going to sew a line of stitches 7.5 centimetres from the fold down at the bottom. So you can, if you want to, just mark on where your stitch line is going to be, if that's going to make it a little bit easier for you, because it's a circle, because it's a cylinder shape, it's quite tricky sometimes, isn't it, to sew completely accurately, because all the fabric's going to start to sort of gather up in the sewing machine. Great. So we've got some nice helpful little markers there. So let's go and stitch that in place. Okay, so you can see now that we've sewn a nice long line all the way around the cuff, and on the inside we've sewn the cuff facing to the sleeve. Okay, so the right side of our sleeve is facing out. We're going to fold back along that original line that we folded our garment on a while ago, folded our sleeve up by, and it should just kind of fall back into place quite nicely. If you just want to double check that everything is okay in that area, just check around your lines like that. Perfect. Okay, so I would just press that in place one final time so that it all remembers where you want it to sit. Okay, so we've got the right side of our garment facing up, and all we're going to do now, just to help it to hold in place, is to do just a couple of tacking stitches along this seam here. So I'm just going to roll the sleeve down slightly, roll the cuff down slightly, and I'm simply just going to run a few stitches between the sleeve and the cuff at this point. Now, these are slightly loose stitches. They shouldn't be like super duper tight, because you're just trying to hold it in place with basically with a nice little loop, so it still looks like it's sort of just folded up loosely. It doesn't look like it's sewn in place and too tight. So just a couple of stitches in this area will be sufficient, and then just knot it off. What I'd also recommend is that you do the same thing on the other side of the sleeve, so just over here. So just turn that sleeve down by about the same amount. It's about 1 centimetre before, wasn't it? And again, just sort of stitch that in place, nice and loosely. We're making sure the stitches aren't showing on the right side. A very nice, elegant little full stop to your sleeve, isn't it that? Lovely, elegant little turn up that just looks really simple and yet really effective. It almost looks like a fake cuff, doesn't it? But we haven't had to do with all the plackets and all the complicated buttons. It's just a really nice turn up detail. So thank you for joining me today. I've been Izzy at Minerva. We're going to continue our pattern drafting series next week as we continue to look at more cuffs. Thank you for joining me today. I will see you next week.